Greetings and a warm welcome to Australia China Media Watch. This week we'll be looking at articles from the Global Times spanning the dates 13th of December 2021 through to 19th of December 2021. During this time frame, there were 15 mentions of Australia from the Global Times. Once we are done with that, we will head over to Sky News Australia to check out their articles and news on China. This week, during the same time frame, there were 4 instances of China being mentioned. Let's begin with a closer unpacking. The Global Times. Published on the 14th of December, originally by the AFP. This was found in the top world news column. The headline reads, Australia to loosen up before Christmas. Plans to ease restrictions continue despite jump in new COVID-19 cases. Published originally by the AFP, 14th of December, 7:53 p.m. Opening paragraph states, Australia will push ahead with plans to ease COVID-19 restrictions before Christmas, officials said Tuesday, even as new coronavirus cases in the country's most populous state reached a 10-week high. After a string of infections linked to festive season parties in and around Sydney, New South Wales recorded more than 800 new cases Tuesday, its highest total since October the 2nd. There were 7 related deaths reported worldwide. Authorities said the new cases would not deter them from dropping most public mask-wearing requirements from Wednesday or lifting a ban on unvaccinated citizens entering restaurants, bars and major events. Quote, we have decided as a country to live with this virus, unquote, said Prime Minister Scott Morrison, touting high vaccination rates as a guarantee of virtually restriction-free festive period. He moves on to state, quote, this Christmas we are about to have is a gift Australians have given to themselves by the way they've worked together with the settings we've put in place, unquote. After a glacial initial vaccine rollout, more than 89% of Australians aged over 16 are now double dose vaccinated, and 93% have received their first jab. A look at the concluding sentence or paragraph. Announcing plans to build a Moderna mRNA vaccine manufacturing facility in Melbourne, Morrison insisted Australia is, quote, better prepared than almost any other country in the world to deal with this and continue to stare at this virus in the face and live with it, unquote. We'll move along to the next piece. The headline for this one reads, I have no doubt he will die if extradited to US. Julian Assange's brother. Published in the Global Times, by the Global Times on the 14th of December in the column Top Talk. The opening paragraph reads, and it comes with an editor's note. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange is facing new uncertainties after the UK's High Court ruled last Friday that he could be extradited to the US. I have no doubt he will die if extradited to the US, said Assange's brother Gabriel Shipton in an exclusive interview with Global Times reporter Wang Wenwen. Assange's fiancée revealed to the media that he suffered a stroke in prison in October due to stress over his future. What does the family plan to do next? How did the US administration disappoint the family? Shipton shared his thoughts with the Global Times. Making use of the keyword search function to locate Australia's relevance to the article, and it looks like Australia appears a number of times. A question posed by the Global Times. What do you expect from the Australian government if it steps in? Will it make a difference? Shipton's response, I think so. Australia, they just have this AUKUS agreement in place, so Australia is an ally of the US. So Australia can turn around and say, hey, we're one of your allies, just let this go. Let our man come home to be with his family. Just yesterday, the Deputy Prime Minister of Australia, Barnaby Joyce, called for the extradition of Julian Assange not to go ahead. That's an encouraging sign that maybe the Australian government might do something here, or at least the Deputy Prime Minister is on the side of Julian and sees that this is a problem that US law can be applied to anywhere. It can be applied to any of the allied countries, extraterritorial reach of US law. I think that's a big problem, and Barnaby Joyce sees that problem. The next mention of Australia comes in the following paragraph. I think it's an opportunity for Australia to tell the US, its biggest ally, that they want Julian to be free. Australia should use its alliance for its favor, rather than just take orders from the US. Australia is an important strategic ally of the US, and we should be respected as such, and we should be listened to when it comes to our citizens. This next article was published on the 15th of December, originally from the AFP, and it can be found in the column Eye on World. The headline for this piece reads, Omicron in unprecedented spread, according to the WHO, and countries are urged to guard against thinking it is a mild disease and act. Making use of the search function, and Australia appears with the cover image. Subtitles for that cover image reads, Travellers receive COVID-19 tests ahead of their flights at a histopath testing clinic at Sydney, Australia in Sydney, Australia on December the 7th, 2021. The Omicron variant of COVID-19, first identified in Southern Africa, has now been detected in countries from the US to Australia, underscoring the difficulties of curtailing contagious new strains. No other mention of Australia is found in this article. Also published on the 15th of December, this was by Global Times author Liu Zhongyi, found in the column Viewpoint. The headline for this piece reads, India rebalances between US, Russia, but China strategy remains unchanged. It comes with an interesting graphic as a cover. An elephant wearing a suit holding onto pawns in the chess game, looking somewhat stressed out. The opening paragraph here reads, Since Narendra Modi began his second term as India's Prime Minister in 2019, one of the defining features of India's foreign strategy has been upgrading relations with the US, Japan, and Australia, as well as promoting the Indo-Pacific strategy to balance China. Let's go have a closer look at further mentions of Australia, and looks like it appears only once in the opening paragraph relating to India's foreign strategy upgrading its relations with the US, Japan, Australia, promoting the Indo-Pacific strategy in an effort to balance China. Published on the 15th of December as well. This was originally from the AFP and published in the Global Times column World. This article's headline reads, Back on the Beach, and it looks like a photo story with a single photo, and we have a scene on Bondi Beach in Sydney, December 15th, 2021, as COVID-19 restrictions have further eased across New South Wales. Australia reported a total of 231,000 infections as of December 15th, 2021, with 2,072 deaths. This next piece was published by the author Guan Guoping in the column Viewpoint. The headline reads, "Stripping off the Emperor's New Clothes of American Democracy," and this was published on December 15th, 2021 at 4:11 p.m. This article comes with a comic strip. Its opening frame has the text, "We will stop the steal." And that's contrasted with imagery of what seems like security forces on one end and freedom protesters on the other end, splitting the symbolism of the American White House, or is that Congress, in two. Please correct me if I had failed to interpret this correctly. We'll move on to frame number 2, "I Can't Breathe." You have a police officer kneeling over a caricature of the Statue of Liberty. Frame number 3, "One day it's like a miracle, it will disappear." The sinking ship of democracy while people are living under the shadow of the COVID-19 virus. Frame number 4 sees America as a pivot for a swing, and on one end of the swing you've got opulence represented by a wine glass being toasted, wearing a suit and a top hat. The headline over here for this specific frame, "Tax the Rich," how it looks like the poor in the US are in a seemingly hopeless situation, contrasted with the leverage that the rich have access to. The opening paragraph of this article reads, "The US's top 2-day summit for democracy ended hastily on Friday. A farce directed and starred by US President Joe Biden, which roped in many countries and regions, finally came to an end." I'm gonna try to make sure I get the pronunciation of this as accurately as I can. By Yuri Tavrovsky, a professor of the Russian University of People's Friendship and expert on Eastern Studies, once said that, quote, "Holding the Summit for Democracy resembles a mistress of a brothel teaching morals to schoolgirls," unquote. He hit the nail on the head. Whether it's boasting about democracy at so-called summits or flaunting US democracy all the time on other occasions, democracy is nothing but a gimmick. Fundamentally, democracy is just the emperor's new clothes for the US. Australia is mentioned once in the article, and the paragraph reads, "Not to mention those participants under hegemonic pressure, even those US allies harbor their own thoughts. The US has consistently squeezed and suppressed its competitors and has never been merciful to its allies. In the 1980s, the US forced Japan to sign the Plaza Accord and successfully prevented Japan from catching up with it. Now, the US has established the AUKUS security alliance with the UK and Australia, robbing France of submarine order worth tens of billions of dollars. The US always turns its back on allies as long as the condition is against its will. How can the allies that participate in the summit not have mixed feelings?" No other mentions of Australia were found in this article. This next piece was published on the 16th of December in the column Top Talk. Headline reads, "Diplomatic cooperation, clever option for global powers in multipolar world." Historian Paul Kennedy. The opening paragraph states, and that's the editor's note, "The US might be number one, but its share of the world has steadily come down over the past 80 years since the end of the Second World War, said historian Paul Kennedy. He believes that while China is getting closer, the US is deeply concerned. 3 decades after the publishing of renowned The Rise and Fall of the Great Powers, how does Kennedy view the current major power competition? Why should big countries be, as he said, prudent? The Global Times correspondent talked with him on these issues. The following are the excerpts. The Global Times questions. This year marks the 33rd anniversary since the publishing of the book The Rise and Fall of the Great Powers. It is said that you were asked by a publishing house to write a new foreword for the book. After deep reflection, you said that the main ideas in the book do not need to change. Why are you so certain? Kennedy's response. I should say in explanation to the Chinese readers of the book that there will be an additional chapter, an additional section at the end of the book. The new revision of this will have a short new introduction which describes the reason why I began thinking of writing the book, The Rise and Fall of the Great Powers. I hope the new revision of this book is published in 2022. In the first case, that's the background description. The entire text of the 1980s edition will stay unchanged. By the end of it, there will be something like a 60-page additional section of reflections on the message of the argument of the book, but also on how things have changed in the 33 years since the book came out, and then some thoughts about where the world might be going in the future. However, when I said that the main ideas in the book will not be changed, apologies, what I meant was that the main argument of the book, that the rise and fall of the great powers in history, which is a political and territorial story, is ultimately influenced by the relative economic strength and technical power of each of the nations in the great power system. So the rise and fall theory that nations and empires rise and fall, depending upon relative economic power, will not change. Let's have a closer look at mentions of Australia in this article. It looks like Australia is mentioned once. We'll backtrack a number of paragraphs to provide further context. And we'll begin with this one. And now we're steadily moving to a multipolar world. I believe that would be a response by Kennedy. As I said before, there are maybe 5 very large economic powers. The second of those large economic powers clearly is China. Statistically speaking, China's GDP is now much larger than Japan's. It's about the same as Europe because Europe is very rich and has more than 20 nations together. But it grows faster than Europe. It grows faster than the US. It is still way ahead of the other big Asian country, which is India. But you'll notice that behind all of this, there is no mention of the economic terms of Russia. So what is left in this multipolar world is for each of the 5 powers to realize that they should be working diplomatically to maintain good relation with the other powers. China's relationship with other parts of the globe, including the US, Japan, Australia, and possibly Europe, is much more fluctuating and much more problematic, and in the midst of this, both Beijing and Washington, if they are clever, will always work to keep good relations with the other players in the multipolar world. That concludes the mentions of Australia in this article entitled Diplomatic Cooperation, Clever Option for Global Powers in Multipolar World, according to the historian Paul Kennedy. This next piece was originally published in Xinhua and is now found in the Global Times Top World News section. The headline reads, Experts urge caution on health measures as Christmas holidays nears. Omicron wave looms across Australia. The opening paragraph. As Australians crowd into shopping centres to buy last-minute Christmas presents and prepare to gather with their families over the summer holidays, the nation is simultaneously facing a looming wave of the Omicron variant of COVID-19. The latest surges in cases has hit hardest in the states of New South Wales. On Thursday, the nation's most populous state recorded 1,742 new locally acquired cases of COVID-19, an increase from the previous day's 1,360 cases. This state has seen daily increases of 50% each day this week. State health authorities have attributed the surge to the Omicron variant and predicted daily cases could reach 25,000 by January. The concluding paragraph states there is a high probability that ATAGI, the Australian Technical Advisory Group on Immunisation, will shorten the time from second dose to booster to try and put the brakes on the increasing number. This next piece was also originally published in Xinhua and found in the China column of the Global Times. This headline reads, "Patroller takes rare birds under his wings." It looks like a photo story and mentions of Australia. Comes in one of the paragraphs in the middle of the article, under the subheading "Endangered Birds Under the Wing." Danzhou is located along the route of migratory birds from East Asia to Australia, and hundreds of thousands of migratory birds flock in droves to Danzhou every winter. No other mentions of Australia in this article. This next piece was published on the 16th of December as well, by Xu Keyue. Headline reads, "Australia reopens border but Omicron concerns likely to deter students." The opening paragraph reads, "Australia reopened its borders to skilled workers and international students on Wednesday, nearly 2 years after closing them due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But a surge in the number of international students returning to the country is not expected given increasing concerns over the spread of the Omicron variant in many countries and regions across the world. International students from China who have been fully inoculated with the Sinovac and Sinopharm vaccines, which have been approved by the Australian Therapeutic Goods Administration, can enter the country from Wednesday without needing a travel exemption. However, Omicron cases are surging overseas, including in Australia, which has sparked anxiety amongst students." A look at the concluding paragraph, and that reads, "A Chinese public opinion poll on Australia conducted by the Global Times Research Centre in June showed that people have a less favourable attitude towards Australia, and the mention rate of Australia on the list of top destinations for Chinese international students dropped 5 percentage points in 2021. The next piece was published on the 17th of December by the author Zhang Dan in the column Top News. The headline reads, "EU tariffs on Chinese steel towers for wind turbines have little impact due to small market share." Opening paragraph reads, "EU tariffs on steel towers used for wind turbines from China won't result in a huge impact to the country's wind turbine exports, as the Asia-Pacific region and some countries along the Belt and Road Initiative are the crucial markets," industry observers said. As nations ramp up efforts to tackle climate change and consider transitioning to green energy, China's strong growth and increasing share in the global new energy industry have made some Western companies, which used to be world-leading and monopolize the sector, feel uncomfortable. Mentions of Australia can't be found once, and the paragraph reads, The top overseas markets of China's wind turbine exports are Australia, the US, South Africa, Pakistan, Argentina, and Ethiopia, according to data from a 2020 report sent by the Chinese Wind Energy Association, also known as the CWEA, to the Global Times. No further mentions of Australia in this article. The next article takes a closer look at ASEAN. And this was published on the 17th of December by Herman Till Laurel. This headline reads, US charm offensive on ASEAN carries, quote unquote, harm potential. And this was found in the opinion/viewpoint section of the Global Times. An accompanying graphic has two sides to the frame. On one end, you have an exclamation for a free and open Indo-Pacific, and in the left-hand side of the frame, you have what seemingly would be ASEAN leaders with their islands being surrounded by American military hardware. The opening paragraph of this article reads, a succession of high US officials, including Vice President Kamala Harris, have visited ASEAN in the past 9 months. The pivotal region in the fledgling Biden administration's assertion of its claim to be the singular leader of the democratic world. Its intention is clear: to convene an in-person meeting in early 2022 with ASEAN leaders to usher in Pivot to Asia 2.0. The charm offensive aims to restore the US to the head of the table of global affairs. Unfortunately, its two recent initiatives to boost US prestige, the Summit for Democracy and the diplomatic boycott of the Beijing Winter Olympics, have been dismal flops. Given the skepticism the repeated flops have generated, it is doubtful that this charm offensive, Pivot to Asia 2.0, faces a better fate. The US charm offensive on ASEAN carries a harm potential stemming from promotion of the rules-based order. First heard in 2003 from US President George W. Bush. It was used to skirt the UN in order to attack Iraq. US State Secretary Antony Blinken, in a speech to Indonesia, invoked that the rules-based order that we built together over decades. Nobody recalls when the US discussed this with ASEAN. Or is it with the defunct SEATO during the Cold War? We'll have a close look at mentions of Australia in this article. And it appears in paragraph number 4. This paragraph reads, the rules-based order pushes unfettered US freedom of navigation operations purportedly to keep a free and open Indo-Pacific, but masks gunboat diplomacy through ASEAN coastal states, threatening regional tranquility. The South China Sea has been safe and free for millennia past until the US and Australia started Talisman Sabre naval drills in 2005, training to interdict the Malacca and other South China Sea straits crucial to the trade shipping route and mainly to China. No other mentions of Australia was found in this article. This next piece was published on the 19th of December in the column GT Voice. And this headline reads, UK needs China FTA as pivot for its own economic recovery. The opening paragraph reads, while it's commendable that the UK has made progress in expanding its circle of friends for economic and trade cooperation, the potential trade benefits are limited compared with its need to boost a domestic economy that has been seriously hit by both Brexit and the pandemic. The UK and Australia signed a free trade deal the first deal negotiated from scratch since the UK left the EU, according to a press release published on the official UK government website on Friday. Taking a closer look at mentions of Australia, and it looks like appears 3 times. The second and third mentions of Australia comes in the following paragraph. Although both the Johnson and Morrison governments have spoken highly of the free trade deal, it still cannot blur the fact that Australia is a small UK trading partner, accounting for 1.7% of UK exports and 0.7% of UK imports. So the deal is unlikely to offer much help to the UK, not to mention the concerns shared by UK farmers that they could be hurt by cheaper imports of agricultural products from Australia as a result of the new deal. The fourth mention of Australia in this article is in the following paragraph. Of course, the deal with Australia is part of the UK's efforts to formulate its own trade network outside the EU. Over past years, the UK signed a free trade agreement with Japan and reached an agreement in principle with New Zealand. No other mentions of Australia can be found in this article. The next piece was published by the Global Times staff reporters in the column Top Business News. 19th of December, 8:34 p.m. This headline reads, China produces urea in full swing for fertilizer use, emissions reductions amid global shortage, according to industry practitioners. The opening paragraph reads, China is boosting production of urea and the raw material for and a necessity for vehicle emissions reductions amid a global shortage, but exports to countries like Australia, which is facing a severe shortage, could be limited due to tightening domestic supplies as well as surging transport costs, industry practitioners and insiders told the Global Times on Sunday. Urea is widely used as a nitrogen fertilizer in the agricultural industry, and it is the raw material for a wide range of chemical products such as AdBlue or diesel exhaust fluid, which is used to reduce the nitrous oxide emissions of diesel engines under international standards. There is a serious shortage of urea in Australia, and so far this month we have exported more than 10 40-foot containers of urea to Australia, a manager surnamed Li at an AdBlue producer based in South China's Guangdong province told the Global Times. The company mainly exported AdBlue to South Korea in October and November. At present, exports of urea are normal. There is no circumstance under which urea cannot be exported to Australia. The customs inspection period is about 15 days. Let's go have a look to see if there are any further mentions of Australia in this article. The next mention occurs in this paragraph, but industry insiders doubted if Australia could ask for help from China after South Korea negotiated with China to speed up urea clearance. They added that Australia is short of urea mostly for fertilizer use, while vehicle use is only a small part. Lee also mentioned that shipping costs from China to Australia are expected to increase further, driven by demand for urea and other products and the impact of the overseas pandemic. Sea freight from China to Australia increased by 4 times this week compared with November. At present, the free on board rate FOB rate from Guangdong to Australia is about 3,400 yuan or $533 per ton, and there's room for an increase because the FOB price to South Korea was above 4,000 yuan at the beginning of November, Lee said. The next article is the final mention of Australia from the week of Monday 13th of December to Sunday the 19th of December. And this article reads in its headline, Exhibition in Canberra tells stories of Greek mythology. The opening paragraph reads, people in Australia will find it hard to travel internationally due to COVID-19. Concerns will now be able to learn more about ancient Greece in Canberra. An exhibition exploring the theme of competition in ancient Greece opened at the National Museum of Australia NMA on Friday, and it'll run until May the 1st, 2022. Further mentions of Australia comes in the following paragraph. Australians have endured months of lockdown and uncertainty, and we are thrilled to give them such a magnificent international exhibition experience after what has been one of the most difficult periods in our nation's history. Lily Whitcomb, curator of the exhibition with the NMA, was in a team who had worked in the past 2 years to bring the objects to Australia. No further mentions of Australia in this article. We can then now move on to have a look at Sky News Australia and their mentions of China. The first piece was published in the afternoon of December the 12th. Peter Dutton labels China's reaction to AUKUS trilateral deal irrational. Opening paragraph reads, Defence Minister Peter Dutton has labelled China's response to the AUKUS security alliance between Australia, the United States and the United Kingdom irrational. The trilateral agreement, which will see Australia acquire 8 nuclear-powered submarines under the new arrangement announced in September, prompted fury from the Chinese government, who declared it a geopolitical gaming tool. The reaction to the AUKUS deal by China, I think, was irrational, Mr. Dutton told Sky News Australia on Sunday. I mean, to suggest that we are in an arms race when we are talking about acquiring nuclear-powered submarines at a time when China is producing on a tonnage rate to more naval assets every 18 months than what the Royal Australian Navy has in its entire fleet. The Defence Minister said while nobody wants conflicts, Australia needs to be realistic about Beijing's posturing under President Xi's leadership. It's an uncertain time, and we need to make sure that we're bringing like-minded countries together, friends and those that share our values and outlook, he said. Nobody wants conflict, and we want to avoid that at every chance, but we need to be realistic also about the posture.
Mr. Dutton, thank you for your time.
Also about the posture of China and the Chinese government and the way in which, under President Xi's relationship, the outlook has changed quite dramatically. Mr. Dutton is adamant Australia will not surrender its sovereignty despite seeking to maintain its excellent working relationship with China. The concluding paragraph of this article reads, he added, our problem is with the Chinese government, not with the Chinese people, and we want to make sure that we can do everything to see peace continue in our region because it's in the best interests of us and our friends as well. So this article came with a video accompanying it, and that video has a duration of 10 minutes and 39 seconds. This next piece was published on the 13th of December with an accompanying video relating to Tibetan students protesting the Beijing Winter Olympics. Not quite directly correlated to the headline. This headline reads, China builds hypersonic plane based on prototype rejected by NASA 20 years ago, by Brianna McKee on December 13th, 2021 at 3:51 p.m. Opening paragraph states, a team of Chinese scientists have successfully built and trialed a hypersonic plane which can fly 5 times faster than the speed of sound and is based on a prototype rejected by NASA 2 decades ago. Chinese media reported on the test, which marks another breakthrough for Beijing in the global race to develop cutting-edge weapons technology. China wants to create a fleet of hypersonic planes capable of flying 10 people anywhere in the world within an hour by 2035, the Sydney Morning Herald reported. The engine is based on a design of a two-stage vehicle
Defence Minister Peter Dutton has labelled
by Chinese-born Min Hang Tang, who was the chief engineer of NASA's early hypersonic program in the 1990s. The concluding paragraph of this article reads, over the next decade, China's nuclear warhead stockpiles, estimated to be in the 200s last year, is projected to reach between 700 and 1,000 warheads. This next article was published on the 15th of December by Brianna McKee. The headline reads, China to mass produce J-20 stealth fighter jets after switch to domestic made engines. China has hit a major new milestone after successfully developing its own WS-10 engine for its most advanced version of the J-20 stealth jet version yet. The opening paragraph reads, China is now mass producing stealth fighter jets with domestic made engines as Beijing pushes its aircraft capabilities in a bid to close the technological gap between its J-20 and the United States F-22. And just to make a note that the accompanying video is 3 minutes and 49 seconds in length, but it's not directly related with the nature of this article. The video's title is Morrison's Tough Line on China Has Been Successful, and that makes for an interesting contrast and counterplay between the headline, China the mass-produced J-20 stealth fighter jets after switch to domestic-made engines, and having Morrison's Tough Line on China Has Been Successful on the same page. We'll move along to the second paragraph. The cutting-edge aircraft was put through its paces at Airshow China 2021 in the southern city of Zhuhai on Tuesday, making the first time the J-20 was revealed to foreign onlookers. China's propaganda mouthpiece, the Global Times, gloated, makes for an interesting contrast, gloated that the maker of the aircraft recently broke records in terms of J-20 delivery due to high demands. The J-20 has entered a mass production phase after it solved the last missing piece of the puzzle, the domestically developed WS-10 engine, the Chinese publication reported. We'll move on to the final article from Sky News Australia relating to China for the week. And this one was published on the 16th of December, also by Brianna McKee. This headline reads, Harvard professor on trial after he lied about ties to a China's recruitment agency. A Chinese recruitment agency to China? Is there a typographical error in the headline? A Harvard professor is on trial in the United States after being accused of lying about his alleged links to a Chinese-run recruitment scheme. There is an accompanying video which is 4 minutes and 33 seconds in duration, and it looks like there is no direct correlation between the article and the video. The video's title reads, US should come down on China like a ton of bricks over Olympic promotions. I'm wondering what the strategy is over here. Opening paragraph. The former chairman of Harvard's Department of Chemistry and Chemical Biology has appeared before a federal court over charges he lied about money he received from a Chinese recruitment agency. Charles Lieber was arrested in January 2020 and appeared before a federal court in Boston on Monday this week after he was charged with lying to US government agents. The former chairman and nanotechnology professor was allegedly involved in a Chinese scheme to apologies for that, to recruit scientists and academics with knowledge of foreign technology and intellectual property. He has been accused of lying to US authorities about his ties to the Beijing and hiding funds he received from the Chinese government. Lying to US authorities about his ties to the Beijing? This article is pretty much written with typo errors. I'll keep going. It comes amid mounting concerns about economic and academic espionage being perpetrated under Chinese communist leadership. A federal jury was chosen on Tuesday and will return on Wednesday to hear lawyers deliver opening statements about Mr.
It was great news
last case.
Last week that Australia.
The final bit of the article, its concluding paragraphs read, China also allegedly launched a mid-year test of a hypersonic weapon capable of orbiting the Earth before entering the atmosphere and striking its target. Beijing has denied it conducted any missile tests, claiming it was testing a reusable space vehicle, but The Guardian claimed the weapon system's design was meant to evade US missile defenses. But chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, compared the alleged launch to the Sputnik moment, likening it to the 1957 catalyst for the Cold War arms race. And this concludes our look at news representations of China from Sky News Australia. 4 articles in total this week, in contrast to the 15 mentions of Australia from the Global Times. Thank you so much for your kindest attention and support. Please remember to come back next week for episode 6 of the Australia-China Media Watch podcast. This is the ACMW signing out.